Welcome to the Improve Work podcast. I'm your host, Daniela Tancău, an HR consultant helping entrepreneurs and team leaders build motivated, high-performing teams. Here we talk about leadership, employee motivation, and other topics that enhance your ability to lead, whether you are an entrepreneur with a team, a business owner planning to build one, or a leader in a company. You'll gain practical advice and insights from me and my guests, experts in the field and entrepreneurs who share their leadership experiences. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on every episode. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi, welcome back to the Improve Work podcast. This episode is about toxic work environments, and my guest is Jim Rettew. Jim is an interim CEO who helps nonprofit organizations get through various crises successfully by addressing core issues and making changes that transform them into functional and healthy organizations. He also helps these organizations choose their next permanent CEOs, ensuring they have the necessary skills and abilities to maintain the progress made and keep the organization on the right track. His professional background is in the public sector and nonprofit organizations. And as an interim CEO, he has had 7 collaborations so far, all of which involved addressing toxic environments caused by former leadership, flawed processes, or harmful patterns. Let's dive in and find out more about how a work environment can become toxic and what can we do about it. Welcome to the podcast, Jim. I'm happy that you are here, and we'll talk about toxic work environments today. And you are a perfect guest because you help companies dealing with crisis, and toxic work environments is one of the possible crises that a company can face. And my first question for you is, how would you define a toxic work environment? Are there some common elements to this type of situations?
Yeah, well, one, thanks for having me. I think a toxic work environment is one where dysfunction is the norm, not the exception, where people spend all their time protecting themselves rather than doing their jobs. And it's not just simply a place where people are unhappy, it's an ecosystem of dysfunction where maladaptive behavior becomes normalized, where power is weaponized and psychological safety is really eroded. You have poor communication, fear-based leadership, gossip as a currency, unclear expectations, constant burnout. People are dreading coming to work. They already have a sense of dread by 9:02 in the morning. And it's not always dramatic either. I mean, sometimes toxicity can be quiet. It can be sort of a chronic indecision, sort of a passive aggressiveness, a
Mm-hmm.
refusal with underperformance. Like the silence can just be as eroded. But I think what I said before, psychological safety is really the key indicator. And I think looking at studies that is the key predictor of team performance. If there's not psychological safety, then people are not performing. So, I mean, what does that mean? It means uh, lack of psychological safety often means high ambiguity, low autonomy, suppression of dissent, moral injury, meaning you have to go against your morals, and sort of structural silence where transparency is not the norm and speaking out can get you in trouble. And so all those things lead to a really toxic environment.
Mm-hmm. And can be some just some of these elements present to say that an environment is toxic, or we have to take in account all of these elements.
Sure, right. You got to take it and varying levels of toxicity, right? Some may be present, others might not, but a little bit of this sort of rottens the whole bunch, right? I mean, uh, these are the kind of things you need to nip in the bud. And so if you introduce any of these sort of toxic elements in, other things can go awry as well.
Mm-hmm. And how do you approach such an environment? What do you do first to start healing the environment or solving the situation?
Yeah. And the first thing I do is listen.
Hmm.
And I go in and I listen empathetically. So my first 30 days, all I do is listen. And often on the first day, I'll go to each department and I'll go, look, I am so sorry we're in this crisis. Like you have been through the ringer. It's probably been awful. Just tell me about what you're experiencing. And I have no agenda for this meeting other than to listen to your concerns and to get an account of what you're experiencing. And that in itself begins the healing process. That I have opened up space for them to tell me. And the staff is the best people to know, right? They're the ones
Hmm.
that are experiencing it. Often the board doesn't know how toxic it is. And so it's good for them in healing. It's good for me as an interim to come in and really understand what's going on the ground. That is absolutely the first step.
And how do you create the trust between you and the members of the company so they can be open and share what they are experiencing? Because they may be reluctant, they may refrain from sharing from what they know, because as an interim CEO or as a person that helps a company, you are in a way an outsider.
Sure.
So how do you set the context and how do you create this trust for them to be honest and tell the truth, their truth?
Yeah. Well, that's just the opening foray, right? I mean, the first step is to do that sort of empathy tour, and I'll always get a couple brave souls that speak out. And then
Mm-hmm.
once a couple of brave souls speak out, then other people speak out. But you're right, it's just a first step, and it's a process of building trust. There's a bunch of other things I'll do to try to build trust, because at the end of the day, building trust is what gets rid of toxicity. Like trust is
Mm-hmm.
the main currency. So I'll be ultra transparent. Um, I'll hold ask me anything meetings where I just go in and again it's like a town hall, but they just ask me whatever question they want, and I'll try to give them a thoughtful, honest answer. I'll show them the finances. Often they've been hid from how the organization is doing or how bad it's doing, and so I'll give them the raw truth of the finances. I'll hold office hours. I'll um, I'll do management by walking around. I'll go and see what they're working on, and I'll attend their events, and I'll get to know them as humans. I'll fight for them. So even if the organization is suffering financially, I usually make sure, at least make sure that they're getting a COLA increase in their salary to manage inflation. And I'll celebrate them. So if something's good going on in their work or even their personal lives, we'll celebrate their success. And it's all these small little drops in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing big, but it's all these small little things that build trust over time. And and at the end of the day, that is absolutely the most critical thing, one of the most critical things I can do.
And once you create these relationships with the members, what are the next steps after you find out their issues, how they are feeling in those work environments? What do you do next?
Well, it's usually going about um, addressing their concerns. So example, one is I'll try to model the behavior that I want to
Mm-hmm.
see. So I define my values and my expectations, and I live up to them. If I don't, I'll apologize like a regular human being and try to make amends. I'll treat my staff like adults um, so that I'm not trying to gaslight them or look down on them. I'll hire really well. Usually in crisis situations, we have a lot of openings or people are resigning. So I'll make sure that I'm hiring people with high emotional intelligence and some basic skills like kindness and empathy. I'll create feedback loops so that it's safe for people to report sort of dissent and disagreement in a way where they don't feel threatened. And then I'll
Mm-hmm.
also look at I'll look at things like the system, the whole ecosystem. So, for example, it may not be the people, it may be the systems and structures that are causing these kind of things. So, for example, if I'm preaching that, hey, I really value you as a staff member and I want your honest opinion, but the process sort of micromanages you or doesn't give you room to think outside the box and to bring your own perspective to it, then I might have to look at those processes and procedures. And then I'd say the final thing is communication. Like if the communication feels inauthentic,
Mm-hmm.
um, then that sort of brings doubt to the whole sort of organization. So I try to really avoid the corporate speak and just talk to people as honest human beings. And it's not just the verbal communication, it's the non-spoken communication. So for example, if I say employees are our most important asset, but they have to park in the far parking lot and the CEO gets to park right next to the building, right? Then my nonverbal communication may not be backing up what I'm saying. So all those kind of things are things that I would look for to change it around.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's very, very interesting. What are you saying? And can you share a real example, a real experience that you encounter in your work? What was the situation that you solved? What were the causes of that toxic environment? And what were the steps that you take? And what were the results?
Yeah. So one of my organizations, well, I should back up and say a lot of time toxicity comes from the top. There's a great Aussie phrase that says fish rots from the head. And and in many cases I agree with that. And in this case, I took over from a former executive, and the former executive compared staff to graduate assistants. Now, what that analogy sort of means is like, yeah, they were sort of smart, but they're like one step above an intern. They can't be
Mm-hmm.
trusted. They're not totally mature. Like, it has a lot of, especially in the US, it sort of has a lot of connotations about looking down on someone. And so the behaviors that were causing it, I think, is the former executive thought that they were the smartest person in the room. They were withholding information. They were gaslighting junior staff. They were treating transparency as optional. They were rewarding loyalty over competence. And they were punishing anyone who sort of stepped out and disagreed with them. And so my role is to reverse all of those things, right? I don't come in thinking I'm the smartest person in the room. My job is to be a catalyst for all the great ideas that staff have and just have been
Mm-hmm.
like pushed down. I'm trying to bubble them up and surface them so we can take advantage of all that good information. Withholding information, no. Again, I try to be radically transparent. And as I said, some of the ask me anything town halls, financial disclosure. I'll give updates from every board meeting so that the staff knows exactly what's going on. I'll have open office hours, right? My goal is to be radically transparent. I am, as I mentioned before, I'm looking at processes and procedures that also might be doing like, does our reward and promotion system, is it incentivizing the wrong thing?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I just try to be more human. I think at the end of the day, like one of the things I preach over and over again is be kind, seek to understand, give the benefit of the doubt. assume positive intent, realize there's multiple truths to every story and situation, and to just be human and give grace to our fellow human beings and sort of pushing that, espousing that really helps create a more psychological safety culture.
Mm-hmm. How much time did take you to create these changes in that organization?
Well, it's hard to say, like, it's never like it was broken and then it was fixed, right? It's always a continuum. So, and it starts from day one. And I actually think after day one, there's people are skeptical, but there's a sigh of relief, right? They're like, oh, maybe there's hope. Maybe this guy gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you build on that over and over and over again, by the time I leave, like, which is usually 9 months, 12 months later, is usually my typical stint. Um, there's a like, yeah, you made that a lot better. There's still
Mm-hmm.
room to grow, right? But you made that a lot better. And that's like one of the biggest compliments I can get.
Mm-hmm. So one of my question is how these changes are maintained after you leave the company, because do usually the all the management comes back, or how things work?
Yeah, so you're right. Like there's a risk that everything I just put in could be overturned by the next person. So what that means to me is it's really important to hire a really good successor to me, right?
Uh-huh.
Like one of the most important things as an interim CEO is to make sure that the permanent CEO that I hire is incredibly emotional intelligent, that won't overturn everything we do and will continue to do it. Like I'm a hawk on that. And that is one of the major requirements of the new permanent CEO. So it's hiring really, really well. The other thing, as I mentioned, is that some of it's the processes and procedures of how the company works. Like, are the processes and procedures, is there distrust baked into those systemic things, or is there trust built in? And so hopefully I've changed those. It's not always about bad apples in the company. Sometimes it's about rotting apples, meaning a system that allows rot to happen. And so once I change those processes and procedures, those are sort of baked in to the company and new habits and new ways of doing
Mm-hmm.
things. And so hopefully they will stay. It's really about developing habits. Like you think of personal habits that you and I might do, like those are the things that last. Those are the things we do automatically. And so after 12 months of working in an organization, I've changed those organizational habits so that things that they didn't even think of that were toxic, they're now doing that are beneficial to everyone in the organization.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a period in which you train the new CEO with your way of doing things, and the new
Yeah,
procedures, the changes that you made in the company?
yeah. There's always a transition period. It really depends on the new CEO how long they want. Sometimes it's as little as a week.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a little weird for staff to have two CEOs on board, especially one that they just got to like in a crisis situation, which sort of bonds you even further. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. Often it might be 2 weeks in person and then sort of a month after that remotely. But yeah, I am making sure that the new CEO is up to speed on the whole history of where we were, what we did, how far
Mm-hmm.
we've and what they need to do to sustain it.
Mm-hmm. And you said that you hire people in this position that have emotional intelligence and other qualities. How do you measure? How do you assess these qualities in these people?
Yeah, I think emotional intelligence is one of the biggest and the hardest to teach, right? I can teach someone to, I don't know, code or do programming or do a service, but I can't teach emotional intelligence. It's sort of baked in. And so one of the necessary ingredients of a new hire is empathy, honesty, kindness. They're great with people. They're insightful on people, right? So I'm definitely looking for that. As I mentioned before, I'm looking for systems thinking. Toxicity isn't always about the toxicity is often about the conditions that made this behavior appropriate. And so I'm looking at someone who can look at the systems, processes, and procedures and decipher what might be wrong that's leading to a toxic culture. Similarly, I'm looking for pattern recognition that they can see beyond the individual complaints to systematic patterns like communication loops, shadow hierarchies, cultural taboos. I'm looking for people who communicate in clear, calm, credible voice. I'm looking for people who are politically savvy. They know where the real power sits, not just what the org chart says. And I'm looking for people who are courageous but wrapped in empathy, that they can speak hard truths with a soft heart.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they can do it with a thick skin and a good sense of humor along the way.
Mm-hmm. And these qualities that you mentioned are also the qualities that help a person deal with this type of situation, this type of crisis, right? Or are other skills that a person needs to have to solve this type of situations?
Oh, I mean, I think those are the good. I mean, they obviously they need to know about the subject matter of whatever we're dealing with, but yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, like as we said at the beginning of the program, like it's about building trust. And trust doesn't come all at once. It doesn't come with some sort of total quality management thing. It comes from little things you do on a daily basis, little drops in people's trust bucket. And to do that, you just have to be really good with people. And that is one of the hardest skills to train. As I said, I can almost train anyone in a subject matter, but I can't train them in being a good human being. And so that is really the core, the crux of what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. So, when do companies call you? When do they search for your help? When they are in a big crisis or when they figure out that they will go in that direction?
No, big crisis, right? And cultural toxicity is often, it may not be what they say they want me to do, but it's always present, right? So, for example, usually it's when the executive director has resigned or been fired,
Mm-hmm.
that finances, they're one step away from bankruptcy, and they're in the newspapers for all the wrong reasons. But when I get into that, it's often a toxic culture that underlines all of that, right? Maybe the executive director created the toxic culture. Uh, or maybe the finances are because people can't do their jobs fully, right? All these things are sort of symptoms of a
Mm-hmm.
toxic underlying culture. And so I can't think, I've done 7 interim gigs now, and I can't think of one that didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
toxic culture when I first came in, because that underlines everything people do. And so it is absolutely one of the things I address. I have to address the other things like finances and a leadership vacuum and people resigning and all those other things. But I absolutely sort of do the steps I mentioned to bring a culture back to health.
Mm-hmm. So a CEO doesn't live when things are good. They live when things are bad.
Yeah,
To to, to say like
exactly.
this.
Right. If things are good, if the culture is great, if finances are great, if everything's healthy, um, you usually don't need someone like me, right? You're going to have a beautiful transition. They're going to figure it out. It's going to be beautiful. No, I pretty much step in when things have gone south very quickly.
Mhm. And I know that you are focused on non-profit organizations. Why do you choose this sector and not go to other types of organizations?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I have been in what I consider public service my entire life. I used to work in politics and public policy. I've worked for governments, and over the last, 15 years, primarily I've worked in nonprofits. And I just know this about myself that it's very hard for me to work for an organization that doesn't have a public service. And so that's why I do it. It just has more meaning. Doesn't mean I wouldn't go to a for-profit organization. If I did, I'd want it to have some sort of public benefit to it. And I think there's a lot of lessons, most of the lessons are applicable to either for-profit or nonprofit. But yeah, I sort of grew up in public service, and that's why I do nonprofits. There's a lot of meaning.
It makes sense. You are used with this environment, and maybe
Yeah,
you do well. I for sure you do
yeah,
well in this environment.
yeah. I think I do well. And at the end of the day, like there's, as I said, there's so much meaning, not just in terms of the mission of the nonprofits, whether it's homelessness or environment, but also I do interim work specifically because organizations, when they're in crisis, they're malleable. Like I can get 3 years of change done in about 9 months because they require change and people are open to change. And it's really hard, but at the end of the day, when you look back a year from now and you see how far you've gone from point A to point B, that's incredibly meaningful.
Mhm.
It's hard, but it's meaningful. And so that's one of the big benefits I get out of interim work.
And did you were in situation in which people didn't want change? They resist change?
There's always people that resist change. Yeah. And I try to follow my own lessons, right? I try to be empathetic. I listen. I give them feedback loops for them to express their dissent in a safe way. I try to address them, but at the end of the day, I have to follow sort of my own consciousness and lead where I think we need to lead. And sometimes they stay and adapt, and sometimes they don't. And that's just part of the deal.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Thank you very much, Jim, for sharing your experiences and knowledge with us. And can you tell us where can people find out more about you and your business?
Yeah. Best place is to go to my website, which is jimrettew.com, JIMRETTEW.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, Jim Rettew. I have a new series called the Nonprofit Survival Guide that people can subscribe to, where you'll get all these good, juicy lessons about what I've learned from leading 7 organizations out of crisis and turmoil. So just hit the subscribe button. It's free, and you'll get sort of weekly updates on what's going on.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you found value in this podcast, subscribe to stay updated. I'm grateful for your support and hope to continue providing content that helps you grow. See you in the next episode.